Hi, my name is Allie. I run Green Witch Mystics, and today I'm going to show you 3 different ways on how to wire wrap round and tumbled stones. I'm going to be using my 3 pliers, my clippers, my round nose pliers, and my flat nose pliers. Grab your 3 stones of choice. I picked polychrome jasper, ocean jasper, and ibis agate. Completely optional hammer. I'm using a little bit of a thinner gauge for the base, so I need it to be thicker, and for now I'm using an 18 and 20 gauge and 28 gauge for the thinner wire, but you don't need to do that. You can just use 18 gauge and then a thinner gauge of your choice, like 24, 26, 28, or a 20 gauge, and then whatever thinner wire, so you don't have to be bound to the gauges that I'm using. So as you can see, I'm making a loop. And I was going to do it on this side. I end up not. I end up not doing it on this side. And I was going to do it diagonal. And I ended up not doing it diagonal. But that's how art goes. So I shortened it some. And now I'm making the other end of the swirl. And I will be hammering this. You do not have to do that, especially if you use a big enough gauge. But I kind of like the flat look. I like the hammered look. If you notice, I'm hammering downwards. I'm hammering in different directions, so I'm not just hammering flat. When you hammer flat down or straight down, it gives the indentations. So if you kind of slide it around after you hit it, it prevents that. So this is the 20 gauge wire I'm using. I took, how many is that? 3? Just 3 or 4? No, it's 3. I took 3 pieces and I will be securing it with flat wire. You can also use like 24 or 26 gauge wire, but I love a good flat wire. They also call it half round, but I like to call it flat because it's what it is. It's flat. But I'm using half round wire. I believe this might be 22 gauge. Half round gauges are a little funny. But I love me some half round wire, so that's what I will be using to make the bottom, and I will meet you back when I'm almost done with that. So a tip for finishing this off, make sure you clip it where it's going to be laying up against the piece so that it's not facing outward to where it'll get snagged or get hooked on anything. So keep it out of the way. So that's the front. And with this part, feel free to use masking tape, duct tape, scotch tape. Probably scotch tape or masking tape would be a little bit better. Whatever tape you got, if you need it, definitely utilize it throughout all of these projects. So this is just one of those tedious parts where you kind of have to finesse the wire, wiggle it around a little bit, make sure it's symmetrical. So that's what I'm doing here. And then really sloppily, I'm just kind of loosely securing the base of this wire just so the bail will be easier to weave and work with. So we will be redoing that part, so don't worry about it. Just make sure you have enough wire at the end to redo that. And then here we go, we're going to start the weave. So I left a lot of this in so that you can just watch this if you don't understand how to do this weave. I have a little bit of a hard time explaining it, but you wrap it once fully, wrap it again like half. Oh no, wrap it again fully. Wrap it fully twice and then wrap it around the other side. So that's one full. Oh yeah, so I do it half. So sorry, this is probably a little confusing, but it will change as the weave goes on. So for usually what I should be doing is one full wrap around, and then you do a half guy, and then you go to the other side. It'll be much more clear as it goes on, I promise. Okay, so here's what I mean. One full guy, one full turn, and then one full turn. But you kind of do a half. You see what I mean? You kind of do sometimes you have to do a little bit of a half. And then as you get you'll do that the whole time. As you get about halfway through, you're going to start to manipulate the wire to get a little bit shorter. So you're going to do it like so. So as you descend on this bale, you're going to have to add more. So see how I'm doing an extra turn? I did 2 full weaves. And then as I get even further down, I'm going to do 3 full weaves because it just, the wire just wants to run down, and it's just easier, in my opinion, to do a couple extra turns than you normally would when you first started the weave. So I'm doing about 2 to 3 full rotations and then weaving the other side. But I will especially be doing 3 rotations once I get closer down to the bottom. Okay, so we are at the end. You are going to go back and fix that bottom part, which is what I'm doing right now. You're going to unravel it. Don't worry, don't freak out. Everything will be fine. So just make sure everything is straightened out and the wires aren't overlapping how they shouldn't be. And then you're going to wrap the remainder of the wire at the bottom around nice and tight. And I will momentarily show you how to finish that off. So to finish that off, you will wrap that around one side and snip it, and that's it. Now to secure the bail, I usually like to flip it not that way, but that way, inwards, I guess. But there are some pieces where it's just more appropriate to flip it backwards. It might be more secure that way. So you're just gonna have to figure out what style that you like, but I usually will flip mine over so that the back is nice and straight. And so as you can see, I am just doing a couple rotations of the remaining wire, and then I will wrap that around one of those extra wires from the bail and just clip that and secure that. So here is what we should be looking like right now. And then we're going to put our stone in. I usually don't, you can use pliers. I usually just use my hands, especially for this back part. But I just kind of do a little pinch, and pinch it kind of in the middle. Make sure they're symmetrical. You don't want that top part. See where my pliers are opening that piece? You don't want that top part to be closed. We need that to be open to secure the kind of those loose wires that are near the bail. So again, this is just one of the parts of the process where it's a little tedious, a little bit of finessing, a little moving around. So it's just some adjustments and fine tweaking. And then this was when I realized that it was not long enough to go long ways because I did it on the other side. I just like this side better. I think it's prettier. So I did it sideways because it works. So I am now using 28 gauge wire. You can use flat wire. You could use 24 gauge wire depending on how thick your wire is. I sometimes find it a little bit more difficult to work with. 26 gauge is a good sweet spot. But as you can see, I am just kind of sewing, and yeah, that's kind of what it is. I'm just sewing and attaching the two pieces together. And then you'll eventually move over to from like the swirl and the other wire to just that base wire. If you see what I'm doing here, and clip those off and secure it, and make sure you push those way under. And I'm doing the same thing again. And then I'm just going to do the same thing to the other side. So now this part, I highly encourage you to freestyle it, get in the flow, do what you think feels good and what looks right, and get some practice in. I just made a nice little circle, and I'm going to put that one to the side, and then I'm going to get another one that's next to it and get it to flow next to it. And then I'm just going to kind of play around with the wires and see what things bend right and which ones don't really bend the way I want them to. Okay, now to attach all of these things. This was why we needed that back opening open. So I'm going to show you. You'll clip it and just tuck that wire right on in there. That's all there is to it. And you'll just do that with all the wires. I'll show you how I attach the bail ones. The ones that are on the bail, I kind of just tuck around into the bail, and that's all there is to it. So that is the first one. Again, I highly encourage you to explore, do your own style, do multiple swirls, do a bunch of tiny swirls, do one long swirl, do no swirls, do triangles, do whatever you want. Okay, on to the next one. This is my ibis agate, and I am hammering the frame that I'm using. You don't need to do that. I'm just using 28 gauge. I will definitely be taping this. It'll just be way easier. I also chose the flat back part of this tumble. That's another important thing with tumbled stones or rounded stones. If they have a flat part to it, I would use that as the back, just personally, because it'll just sit easier. So that's one thing to take into consideration, is the natural shape of the stone and what will sit best. So I'm using 28 gauge wire. You could use this flat wire, or half round wire. That's what it's actually called. I'm not, but you could use 28 gauge. 26 or 24 gauge would be the best for this, but I don't have that, so you could also use that flat wire for the bail part. You just wrap it around both pieces, both wires of the bail. So that's another easy way to make a bail that isn't as time consuming as weaving. I'm not gonna go into too much verbiage with this part since I already did a weave. So yeah, I'm just gonna do it again, but you can watch again and observe again if you didn't really get it too good the first time. And with this bail, I'm going to freestyle it. I'm going to do whatever. You're welcome to copy this. You're welcome to do something else. But I'm going to show you, I didn't show this in the first weave, but this was how I attach some elements on the bail. To just kind of tuck it around, tuck it in there. You can see it on the side view. You can pause and look at the side view. That's how you do it. So, this is going to be a little chaotic, and yours will not look like mine, and mine will not look like yours. But you can start from whatever end you want. I just started from the top, because I just felt like the easiest. You could probably start from, like, the side, too. And I am just looping it in. I secured it around the base, and then I'm going around underneath. I think, yeah, I went around underneath. I'm going back over again. So every time you go across, you want to make sure you loop it under the base so that the wire is secured. And so that's what I have so far. It's just a little crisscross. And I'm going to tighten that. And then we're going to get more chaotic. Going to loop that around the back. And this is it around the back. And I'm just going to, yeah, that's what I'm doing. This is what we're doing. So no rhyme or reason. Chaos with the goal of security. Doesn't that just sum up life right now? I really hope that y'all can understand this concept just from looking. I'm doing my best to describe it, but it is, again, going to depend on your stone. If you have a rougher stone, it will be easier, I will say. And if you have a thicker gauge, 28 gauge is pretty thin. So if you have a 24 gauge, probably won't be as hard. And again, feel free to utilize like tape. And don't get stressed out or frustrated if the rock and the stone keeps falling out of your hands, because my grip strength is a little crazy. My finger strength is a little kooky because I've been doing this for a long time. So the stones don't slip out of my hands as often. I also have cut some of that out because it's loud and it's just not necessary. It's just unnecessary filler. So I drop my stones, don't you worry. So I'm going to go do a good old tug test. The wobbliness is the frame moving. So it's not the stone. The stone is not moving within that wire. It's like the frame is moving, which is good. So if there's any wobbliness, you might have to redo it, might have to tighten up some things, make sure that the backing doesn't have any wire that's poking out. Make sure you kink everything in, and there she blows. There she is. For this one, I'm using 18 gauge wire, and you will need a thin wire, so like a 26, 28. And I'm going to start in the middle and get my round nose pliers and make a loop. And then I'm going to flatten that loop out, if that makes sense. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to flatten it out like that. And you can choose on how you'd like to do this. You can go this way or this way. Just depends on how funky you want to get with it. I will be going that way. You can use a Sharpie to make markings on the wire to make sure it's perfect. I'm not going to do that. but you are going to form or start forming the top corners that are going to hug this piece. So you want to make sure it's not too tight or too loose. And then I'm going to bend the bottoms just slightly, nothing too crazy, just slightly to start to get it in formation. So I put a little bit of Scotch tape on the outside wires, and I'm just kind of freestyling this a little bit. I'm going to add a loop like so. I'm going to loop it around to the other side. Depending on how you make this could be reversible, which this ends up being kind of reversible. So that's the vibe I'm feeling. I'm liking it. Again, your stone, depending on how your stone looks and the texture, you might have to do something else or something slightly different. But I will take that piece and secure it around that little bail part, snipping it and securing it. Beautiful. And next we just have to secure the other side. So I was gonna do the same one like I did on the other side, but it just wasn't gonna work with the bail, so I did a little loop. I didn't show it, but you will see it in just a second. There's my little loop. And then I end up taking that wire to the bail and securing it at the top. So depending on how you do this, you might not need thin wire. The only reason I needed thin wire was to secure that loop to make sure that it didn't move anywhere. If you use squared wire, you also probably won't need thin wire, but there was a couple elements to this that I did need to be secured. And so as you can see, I'm just trying to make it not look clunky and bulky at the top. So just snip off whatever you need to make that work. And then here I am just using my 28 gauge wire to secure the elements together to make sure there's no loosey-goosiness. And this one is done. That's all I have for you today. I hope you found this helpful. Please leave any questions, comments, or future video suggestions below. Check out my website, follow me on all the socials, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!